Job Lesson 1. Job's Bad Day.
Our lesson today is from Job chapter 1 and chapter 29. The book of Job is in the Old Testament of the Bible. Say with me the books of the Old Testament from Genesis to Job. Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, Deuteronomy, Joshua, Judges, Ruth, 1st and 2nd Samuel, 1st and 2nd Kings, 1st and 2nd Chronicles, Ezra, Nehemiah, Esther, Job. In our lesson today, we will meet Job and his family. We will find out about Satan's conversation with God about Job. We will hear about Job's bad day. But first, let's listen as Annabelle talks to her teacher about the worst news ever. Hey, teacher, I heard the worst news ever.
Hi, Annabelle. What did you hear?
I heard about this guy that lost all of his money in a stock market crash.
That's terrible.
That's not all. The same day he lost his job because the company he works for got sold to foreign investors.
That's awful.
That's not all. When he drove home, he found fire trucks in front of his house, and his house was just a big pile of charred, steaming lumber.
That's dreadful.
That's not all. When he stepped out of his car, a teenage drug addict knocked him down, took his car keys, and drove off with his car.
That's horrible.
That's not all. When he tried to call his wife, his cell phone battery was dead.
That's unfortunate.
Unfortunate? He was completely disconnected from social media. That was by far the worst thing that happened to him that day.
Well, that poor man was certainly having a bad day.
You can say that again.
Well, that poor man was certainly having a bad day.
That's not funny. Have you ever heard of anyone having a worse day than that?
As a matter of fact, I have heard of someone that had a worse day than that. The man's name was Job. There's a book in the Bible that tells us all about Job.
Oh, I know. The book of Ruth.
Actually, you can read about Job in the book of Job. We're going to talk about Job today. Long ago in the country of Uz lived a man named Job. Job was a real person who is mentioned in several places in the Bible, in Ezekiel 14 and in James 5. But the main place we read about Job is in the book of Job in the Old Testament of the Bible. Job lived in the land of Uz. He did not live in the land of Oz. He lived in the land of Uz. The book of Job is one of the earliest books in the Bible. If you open your Bible, you will find that the book of Job is placed right before the book of Psalms. However, the events that took place in the book of Job probably happened in the same time period as parts of the book of Genesis, the first book of the Old Testament. The Bible tells us many things about Job, but we are going to talk about 6 important things that we read about Job. The first thing we know about Job is that he was a very godly man. Job obeyed God and he avoided evil. With all his heart, Job wanted to please God. He built altars to present his gifts and offerings to God. Job described his walk with God as follows. When his lamp shone upon my head, and when by his light I walked through darkness. Job 29:3. Job says that he felt God's presence as if a light above his head guided him through the darkness. In other words, Job lived his life letting God guide his decisions. Job's life was one of obedience to God. Job was not a perfect man, but he was a man of integrity. Integrity means doing right even when no one is watching. The second thing we know about Job was that he was a highly respected man. When Job walked into town, the older men stood to their feet. When people heard Job speak, they listened to what he had to say and blessed him. When Job's name was mentioned, people always spoke well of him. The third thing we know about Job was that he was a very generous man. Job shared his wealth with others. Job rescued poor people who asked him for help. He supported children that had no parents. He helped people who would otherwise have died. He assisted widows that could not make ends meet. The fourth thing we know about Job was that he was a very righteous man. He gave moral guidance to people that needed it. He rescued those who had been taken advantage of by wicked men. The fifth thing we know about Job was that he was a very wise man. God had blessed Job with great wisdom. Men waited for Job in order to hear his advice. When Job talked, people listened. Job 29:22 says, "After my words they did not speak again, and my speech settled on them as the dew." Job understood people and was able to give advice about the things that concerned them. The sixth thing we know about Job was that he was a very wealthy man. In Job's day, there were no banks or credit cards or checking accounts or dollar bills or even coins. Wealth was measured in livestock and servants. The Bible tells us that Job was the wealthiest man in the East. He had 7,000 sheep, 3,000 camels, 500 female donkeys, 500 yoke of oxen, and many servants. The Bible also tells us about Job's family. Job had a wife, 7 sons and 3 daughters. Job's children were grown up, and they had all made homes of their own. On special days, such as birthdays, Job's children would get together to celebrate. The 7 sons would take turns hosting the celebration at their homes and would send invitations to their brothers and 3 sisters. After each of these celebrations, Job got up early in the morning and placed an offering on the altar for each of his children. Job thought, "Perhaps my children have sinned in their heart during the celebration." This was Job's regular practice. God loved Job and blessed him with health and happiness and wealth. Job was also blessed to have many friends and to be greatly honored by others. Job describes his life in Job 29:25. "I chose the way for them and sat as chief, so I dwelt as a king in the army, as one who comforts mourners." There was no king or president in the land of Uz, but the people looked to Job for guidance and comfort as if he was their king or president. Job had earned the respect of the people of Uz by his godly life and had shown himself to be a man of compassion and great wisdom. But one day, something happened that totally changed Job's life. We read about it in Job chapter 1. We know it happened because it is recorded in the Bible. But Job did not know what was about to happen to him. Satan entered God's presence in heaven and began to complain to God about Job. Satan said,
"The reason that Job honors and obeys you is because you have blessed him and protected him. You have blessed everything he touches and caused his possessions to increase. But if you strike down everything Job owns, he will surely curse you to your face."
One of Satan's names, found in Revelation 12:10, is the accuser of the brothers, because Satan accuses believers before God night and day. Satan complained to God that the only reason that Job worshipped God was because God had allowed Job to become very wealthy. Satan was saying in essence that God was not worthy to be worshipped and that God had to bribe people to worship him. He was saying that the only reason Job worshipped God was because God had blessed him with so many good things. Satan told God that if he took everything away that Job had, Job would stop worshiping him. God knew this wasn't true, and he gave Satan permission to take away all of Job's possessions.
"Very well," the Lord told Satan. "Everything Job owns is in your power. However, you must not lay a hand on Job himself."
So Satan left the Lord's presence. Remember, Job did not know that this conversation had taken place in heaven. Everything continued to go along well for Job and his family until one very bad day. Job's sons and daughters were feasting in the house of the oldest brother when a messenger came to Job. The messenger reported, "While the oxen were plowing and the donkeys were grazing nearby, the Sabaeans swooped down and took them away. They killed all of the servants, and I alone have escaped to tell you." While he was still speaking, another messenger came to Job and reported, "A lightning storm struck from heaven. It burned up all of the sheep, and it burned up all of the servants, and I alone have escaped to tell you." That messenger was still speaking when yet another messenger came and reported, "The Chaldeans attacked and took away the camels. They killed all the servants, and I alone have escaped to tell you." He was still speaking when yet another messenger came and reported, "Your sons and daughters were celebrating together in the oldest brother's house. Suddenly a powerful wind swept in from the desert and struck the house. The house collapsed on the young people so that they all died. I alone have escaped to tell you." When Job heard these things, he was filled with grief and sadness. He expressed his grief in the way that people of his day customarily expressed grief. Job tore his robe and fell to the ground. And then Job worshipped God. In Job 1:21, we read Job's first spoken words after hearing this overwhelming news. "Naked I came from my mother's womb, and naked shall I return there. The Lord gave, and the Lord has taken away. Blessed be the name of the Lord." Job recognized that everything that he had owned had come from God. We continue to read in the next verse that Job did not blame God for what happened. Job 1:22 says, "In all this Job did not sin, nor charge God with wrong." Satan had challenged God that if Job lost all his possessions, he would curse God. Satan had taken away everything Job had, his children, his servants, his sheep, his camels, his oxen, and his donkeys. And yet Job did not curse God. Satan had lost the challenge. Sometimes when people are hit with difficult circumstances, they get angry with God and blame God for what happened to them. Sometimes people in difficult situations lose faith in God. What do we read about Job? Throughout all of this tragedy, Job did not sin. You may find this lesson on Job to be a bit frightening, and that's understandable. After all, Job did everything right. He loved and worshiped God, and he was a man of integrity. We read that there was no one else like Job, and yet God allowed some very bad things to happen to Job. This incident may leave you wondering, if I love God and obey Him, is something like this going to happen to me? I look at it this way. Job went through these very frightening things so we don't have to. We're going to learn some amazing things about God from the book of Job, but we can learn from Job's experiences. Thankfully, we don't have to experience the same things that Job experienced in order to learn the lessons that Job learned. Like Job, we may not understand why bad things happen, but we can say, along with the words of Job in Job 1:21, "The Lord gave, and the Lord has taken away. Blessed be the name of the Lord.